Hello, this is Mikey Bizan, and I'm answering questions. Well, this is a Q&A video that I was gonna do 5 months ago, and then I forgot to answer the questions. Well, this is just gonna be part 1, so if you have any more questions, you can ask them in the comments and I'll address them in part 2. So, the first question is from Socially Awkward Panda, who asks, what software do you use to make your animations and which graphic tablet? Since I'm going into animation, this could help me a bit. The software I currently use is TVPaint Animation, and I've been using it since 2015. Before that, I was using Flipbook, and before that, I was just drawing on flipbooks and note cards and purely paper animation. TVPaint is my favorite program by far because it allows for a wide variety of styles. It doesn't have a certain look to it like Flash often does, although I've seen people adapt Flash to their own styles. It's just my favorite 2D program, and you can import traditionally drawn paper drawings and combine digital and traditional techniques. So the graphic tablet I use is a Wacom Cintiq 22HD. The Crazy Show 2008 asks, have you considered working at Cartoon Network or on any sort of film? Well, no, I've never considered working at any studio due to my issues with authority. Some of my favorite shows come from Cartoon Network. The most important thing for me is to maintain as much creative control over what I produce as possible, and freelancing allows for this. So I have thought about making films. Making music videos is a great way to experiment with different artistic techniques, and you can express yourself, and the stories don't have to make that much sense. If the stories don't make sense, it's much more forgivable within the context of a music video. I would like to experiment with films that are more narrative and tell a coherent story. MM has a few questions. What is your daily routine / work schedule? I eat breakfast and read at the same time. I always read while I'm eating because it takes about 15 minutes to eat, and then 3 meals a day, that's 45 minutes of reading that is done while eating. So it's killing 2 birds with 1 stone. But reading in the morning, it helps get my brain going, and I try to read about a bunch of different things because the more ideas you have in your head, the more connections you can make, the more creative solutions you can come up to for problems. So putting good stimuli in your head helps you output interesting things. So after getting some fuel in my gut and brain, I try to do the most challenging work first. So in the context of animation, that would be planning, storyboarding something, drawing the key poses, everything that requires the most structure and critical thinking I do first. And then throughout the rest of the day, as my energy level is decreasing, I do more repetitive tasks, such as drawing all the in-betweens or drawing the line work over rough drawings. Well, also part of the routine is I always do at least a 1 hour walk at some point. I find that if I don't get my walk in, my energy level's worse, my mood is worse, I don't come up with ideas as well. Getting some kind of physical exercise is extremely important, especially if you do a type of work that requires a lot of thinking and sitting. It gets blood flowing to your brain. How do you deal with feelings of procrastination? Sometimes it does help to step away from something, but it can also make it harder to get back to that thing you're stepping away from the more days you take stepping away from it. So sometimes it really is just a matter of doing it. Momentum builds momentum. The first step of pushing a boulder is really, really hard, but once that boulder does get moving, it starts rolling down the hill and it takes care of itself. What is your dream job or end goal? I've never been good with thinking super far ahead. I suppose my goal is to just try to keep improving and doing the best I can. How do you get through a long project and stay focused? Well, deadlines. Deadlines make it impossible not to stay focused. Just that fear of failing forces me to work every day and think about what I'm making every day. So my issue is the opposite. It's getting unfocused, unwinding, stepping away from something and absorbing other people's work. There's definitely a balance between producing and consuming ideas. And TVPaint is expensive. Is it worth dropping the money on the program? I would say it's a case-by-case scenario. If you're just doing animation for fun or as a hobby, then there's many free alternatives. But if you're going to do it professionally, I would say it's worth the investment. Sketchy Times TV asks, how do you get jobs from bands to do their music videos? Well, I started out making music videos for my own songs, and then in 2013, the Flaming Lips had a music video contest for their song Look, the Sun is Rising, and I entered that and it won. So that was the first paying gig I ever got. And I tried the contest route for a couple more years and had some success here and there, but it was a big gamble because it's a lot of time to make a music video and then you don't know what the band wants. So it can be a good payoff, but it's just high risk. So then last year, I started emailing bands and record labels my show reel and asking if they would be interested in having a music video done for them. And I had a lot more luck that way by researching bands that have similar styles to the type of art that I make. This question's from Sarah Harris. Any tips on how to maintain focus with a wandering, creative mindset? Well, first off, I know you from Google+, and I think your work is really, really good. So just keep making stuff. As for your question, there's no formula for creativity, but there are routines and structures you can set in place to harness creative energy. The first thing to do would be to reduce clutter and distractions from your mind. Even just checking social media for 5 minutes will destroy any creative momentum you have. It takes some time to get into the flow state, and it takes effort to stay focused on the task at hand, which, well, I'm basically regurgitating stuff I've been reading lately. One book is called Deep Work by Cal Newport, and the other book I'm reading is The Accidental Creative by Todd Henry. And basically, the takeaway is that concentration is a skill that can be trained like any other. Multitasking retards growth. Your brain can't become skilled at any single activity if its attention is spread across multiple activities. The best way to stay mediocre at everything is to try to do everything at once. Attention is a limited resource. There's constant distractions competing for our attention. So being able to set aside a solid block of time to concentrate on one thing and one thing only will improve your skills at that one thing. Nicole asks, have you always had a unique animating style, or did it take time to develop? It started out very untechnical. I mean, it looked like just creepy drawings of anatomically incorrect people morphing around, and there were really no backgrounds. Everything had to be kept very minimal because I was drawing everything on computer paper and note cards with markers and pens, and I did a straight ahead approach to animation, which means I just drew one picture and then placed a piece of paper over it and drew the next with no idea whatsoever for where the drawings would go. So they just sort of evolve and have a life of their own. The other style of animation is pose to pose, where you plan out the key poses of your characters, so it's a lot more logical and story driven. Everyone's style inevitably changes over time because you're changing over time. But I never consciously decided to try to make a style that was unique or had a certain look to it. I just drew what I was technically capable of. The ideas in my head are a lot more complicated, and I think probably every artist can relate to this, that the vision you have in your head is always different than what comes out on the page. And part of that has to do with the fact that our minds can create far more detailed landscapes than the tools we have can replicate. So that's the last question for part 1 of this Q&A. If you have any other questions, please ask them in the comments and I'll try to answer them in the next video. And with that, thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you later.